My wife asked me to stay late at work on my birthday so she and my best friend could finish being together in my house. Hey everyone, settle in with me for a while, because today feels like one of those nights where every story starts with one small detail and ends with somebody's whole world splitting in half. Whether you are driving, folding laundry, or hiding from everybody for 20 minutes, you are in the right place. First, I have a husband overseas who comes home to a betrayal so ugly it sounds unreal. Then a woman who thinks one intimate night ruined everything, even though the real damage might be the way she sees herself. After that, someone opens up about a painful piece of her past and learns a hard truth about the man standing in front of her. Story 4 is about the ex who comes back years too late. Story 5 starts with a fundraiser for a sick child and ends with a family uncovering something far darker than money. And the last story has a new mother facing a husband, a mother in law, and a choice that could change the rest of her life. Story 1. She asked me to stay late on my birthday. I had already made up my mind before I ever said any of this out loud. That is probably the strangest part. By the time I finally sat down and put words to it, I was not looking for revenge, and I was not even looking for advice. I think I just needed to hear the facts in one place, because when the facts are this ugly, your brain keeps trying to reject them. I had been married to my wife for 7 years. My best friend had been in my life for 10. He was family to me, or at least that is what I thought. When you trust two people that deeply, you do not look for signs, you relax. I was deployed when some of this happened. Even writing that still makes my chest tighten. I was away doing my job, missing home, missing birthdays, missing ordinary nights, and apparently the people I loved most were using my absence like it was permission. What makes it even harder to swallow is that it was not all hidden in some distant hotel room or some city I had never seen. Some of it happened almost in front of me, tucked inside ordinary moments I would have never questioned at the time. One day they went to get tattoos together. At the time, it sounded harmless. Friends do that. Married people trust each other. But later I found out they crossed the line in the parking lot. On another day, on my birthday of all days, my wife asked me to stay later at work so she could finish getting ready. I thought I was helping her. I thought I was making our night easier. What I was really doing was giving her and my best friend more time to be together before I walked back into my own life like a fool. And if that was the whole story, it would already be enough to level me. But it was not the whole story. A few days later, we had both been drinking, and she started talking in that loose, reckless way people do when guilt finally gets tired of hiding. She told me that during our first year of marriage, while I was away at military school, she had also slept with 3 of her coworkers. 3. One of those situations ended in a pregnancy, and she had an abortion that I knew nothing about. I sat there trying to process the timeline, the lies, the years I had lived inside a version of my marriage that only existed because I had never been given the truth. The worst thing about betrayal is not just the act itself, it is the theft of reality. You start replaying everything, every goodbye kiss, every phone call, every time someone said, "Trust me." Suddenly your own memories do not feel like yours anymore. I remember staring at her and thinking, this sounds fake. It sounds like the kind of story somebody would write to get a reaction, but it is my life, and I would trade almost anything for it to be fake. There was one more layer to it that broke something else in me. My so-called best friend was married too. He told my wife he had already confessed to his own wife, and for one small second I thought there was at least some honesty left somewhere in this mess. I reached out to his wife because I thought the two of us could at least have the truth. He had not told her anything. I was the one who had to tell her. I do not think there is a clean way to survive a moment like that. There is only the ugly first step, then the next one, then the next. I know what I am doing now. I know I am moving forward, but I also know there will always be something chilling about the fact that the two people I would have trusted with my life treated my absence like an opportunity. End story. Here's what I think. He is right about one thing. Some betrayals do not just break trust, they poison memory itself. She did not make one reckless mistake and confess the next day. She built a whole second reality and let him keep living in the first one. And the friend is no better. Anybody who can look you in the eye, take your loyalty, and still do that behind your back was never your friend to begin with. I also think telling the other wife mattered. Painful truth is still better than smiling ignorance. He did not destroy that marriage. The people inside it did. Would you tell the other spouse immediately? Or leave that part alone and walk away? Let me know below. Story 2. I thought one night meant I had ruined myself. I matched with this guy from my university, and if I am being honest, I was not even sure I was attracted to him at first. He was not my usual type. I almost wrote him off in my head before we even met. But then we went on this simple little walk and coffee date, and something about being around him felt easy in a way I had not felt in a long time. That is really the beginning of the whole problem. Not that he pressured me, not that he tricked me. It was that I felt safe. We walked, we talked, and at some point we ended up sitting out in a field. I remember thinking that I was acting like myself again, not the guarded version of me, just me. He was sweet the entire time. He wanted to kiss me, I could tell, but I did not want to move that fast. At least that is what I kept telling myself. Then he invited me to get food, and we went. It started raining later, buses were inconvenient, and he still walked me all the way home, 5 whole kilometers. He paid for my meal even though it was his last bit of cash, and when I tried to give him money back, he refused it. It felt thoughtful, gentle, old-fashioned in a way that lowered all my defenses. When we got back to my place, inviting him in for tea did not feel like some huge decision. It felt practical, kind even. I had done that kind of thing before and nothing happened. I told myself this was the same, but then we kept talking, and this time I let him into my room. We talked about books, we cuddled. It felt warm and peaceful, and almost too intimate for how little time had passed. That is the part she could not forgive herself for. Not the tenderness itself, but how badly she needed it. I kissed him back. I tried to slow things down a few times, but every time I thought about stopping, I felt that same wave of comfort hit me again. It scared me how quickly my body stopped bracing for disappointment. It scared me how badly I wanted to stay in that calm. We stayed in bed holding each other for hours. There was no dramatic seduction, no big speech, no single movie moment, just one boundary after another getting softer because I felt peaceful. Eventually, we slept together. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye, asked if I would tell him when my period came, and said he wanted to see me again. If the story ended there, maybe it would sound simple, maybe even sweet. But after he left, my mind turned on me. I spiraled almost immediately. I got emergency contraception. I started replaying every second like I was building a case against myself. I called myself weak, easy, desperate for affection. I could not stop thinking that one night had revealed something shameful and pathetic about me, like I had failed some invisible test of value and self-control. What hit me hardest was how quickly I translated closeness into disgust. It was not really about him. It was about me believing that if I wanted tenderness badly enough to surrender to it, then there must be something wrong with me. I cried at the bus stop. I told myself no wonder people leave, and that is what makes this story hurt so much. It is not a story about a manipulative man or a dangerous night. It is about a woman whose first instinct after intimacy is not joy or even confusion. It is self-contempt. That kind of pain does not come from one date. That kind of pain was already waiting there, looking for a reason to speak. End story. Here is what I think. I do not hear a woman describing regret because something terrible happened. I hear a woman describing panic because she was treated gently and then blamed herself for wanting more of it. That is a very different thing. If she truly did something against her own values, she gets to sit with that and decide what she wants to do differently next time. But calling herself worthless over consensual intimacy is far harsher than this story deserves. The bigger issue is not that she slept with him. The bigger issue is that affection immediately turned into shame in her own head. Would you go on the second date and see what this really is, or pull back and reset completely? Let me know below. Would you go on the second date? Story 3. I told my boyfriend about my past and he turned it against me. This was my first serious relationship. 10 months in, first real fight, and suddenly I was sitting there wondering whether I had done something cruel without realizing it. When I was 15, I was living in a chaotic home and dating an older boy during a period of my life when I was not safe, not steady, and definitely not equipped for adult consequences. I got pregnant, and that pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. It is not a story I tell casually. not because I am hiding it like a secret file in a locked drawer, but because it belongs to a very painful season of my life. I survived it, I moved on, I am proud of who I became after it. My boyfriend did not know. There had simply never been a moment where it felt natural. Then a few days ago, we were talking about children and the future, and the conversation finally got close enough to that old wound that I told him. I thought it would be one of those heavy, quiet moments. Maybe he would ask a few questions. Maybe he would hold my hand. Maybe he would just sit with it. Instead, he got angry. Not sad for me, not shaken on my behalf, angry at me. He said I had hidden something huge from him. He said I had not trusted him. He acted like I had tricked him into loving a version of me that was incomplete. Then he stormed out, ignored my calls and messages, and later told me he was not angry anymore. He just needed time to process. I remember sitting there thinking, process what exactly? The pregnancy was not current. It was not his. It was not evidence that I had been dishonest about who I am now. It was a painful memory from a chapter of my life when I was a child trying to survive circumstances I barely understood. And somehow, I was the one being treated like I had committed an offense. My mother told me maybe I should be patient. Maybe hearing something like that out of nowhere would be hard for anyone. And I understand that surprises can land badly. I really do. But there is a difference between being caught off guard and making somebody's trauma about your own discomfort. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, because what I needed in that moment was care. I needed to feel like the person standing in front of me saw the younger version of me, the scared version of me, and recognized that I had carried something difficult for years. Instead, I got interrogation. I got distance. I got the feeling that he now saw me differently, like some essential innocence had been revoked without his permission. I kept asking myself whether I had been unfair, but the question started changing shape. It stopped being, did I wait too long to tell him, and started becoming, what kind of man hears that story and chooses anger first? Nothing about my current life changes because of what happened when I was 15. The only thing that changed in the present was my understanding of him. I thought I was sharing something vulnerable with someone safe. Then I watched him make that vulnerability feel contaminated. I am not saying partners can never be surprised by each other's pasts. Of course they can, but love should know the difference between a confession and a scar. What I gave him was a scar. He handled it like evidence, and once you see that difference, it is very hard to unsee it. End story. Here is what I think. She did not deceive him. She told him when the conversation finally reached a place where that history mattered. A mature partner can be surprised without becoming cruel. What bothers me most is that he turned a story about her pain into a story about his entitlement. That is a terrible reflex in a boyfriend. If he cannot respond gently when she hands him something this fragile, then the problem is not her timing. The problem is his character under pressure. Would you wait for him to come back and explain himself, or take that reaction as the answer and leave? Let me know below. Story 4. 5 years later, my ex wanted me back. I dated my ex from high school into adulthood, which means by the time we finally broke apart, he was woven through almost every version of who I had been. That made it very easy for me to excuse things that should have mattered more. His friends used to tease him back then and tell him I was too nerdy, too plain, not good enough for him. They compared me to his ex all the time. He never joined in, but he never really shut it down either. I told myself silence was harmless. I told myself he loved me in all the ways that counted. Then I got into a serious car accident and nearly lost my eyesight. My mental health crumbled for a while after that. To his credit, he stayed by my side during my recovery, and for a long time, that loyalty became the thing I used to excuse everything else. He moved away for university. Later, I joined the same university in a different major. Things were okay for a little while, but then the drifting started. He spent more and more time with friends, especially one girl who openly flirted with him. I told him I was uncomfortable. We argued. Then everything was smoothed over just enough to survive, not enough to feel truly safe. And then my father got very sick. For months, we lived inside hospital visits, worry, and that awful feeling of waiting for news you already know is not going to be good. When he died, I was devastated. I called my boyfriend crying, trying to get home from another city. We were in the same city at that exact time, and he still did not come see me. I asked if we could meet before I left, and he told me he was busy. Busy. He apologized later, but something in me changed permanently after that. Grief has a way of stripping away your favorite illusions. I could suddenly see that love is not just who holds your hand during the dramatic scenes everyone can recognize. Love is who shows up when your voice breaks and there is no glory in it. We stayed together after that, but it was a shadow version of us. He moved again for work and started a business. I moved for my own job. We slid into long distance, then into barely talking, then into the kind of relationship where the title is still there but the warmth is gone. One day I finally asked the question I had been avoiding. What is this even becoming? We fought. In frustration, I said, maybe we should break up. Then I panicked, apologized, and told him I did not actually want that. He told me I was too dependent on him and that leaving me was better for my own good. That was the moment he really left, even before the official end. I begged. He did not stay. Afterward, he dated the same woman I had once worried about. 5 years passed. My life went on. I learned how to live without waiting for him to choose me properly. Then out of nowhere, he called and said leaving me had been the biggest mistake of his life. He wanted another chance. He wanted to come back now that time had apparently polished his regret into wisdom. But when I listened to him, all I felt was distance. I was grateful for the good things he had once done for me. But gratitude is not the same thing as love, and history is not the same thing as a future. So I told him no. That no did not come from cruelty, it came from clarity. There is something almost peaceful about realizing you are no longer standing in the same emotional room where somebody left you. They may come back and knock on the old door, but you do not live there anymore. End story. Here's what I think. This is exactly what boundaries look like after enough time has passed for the fog to clear. He may be sincere now. He may even genuinely regret losing her. None of that creates an obligation. She is not cruel for declining a version of love that failed her when she needed it most. Sometimes the healthiest answer is not dramatic at all. It is just, no, that chapter is over, and I do not want to reopen it. Would you give a first great love one last chance, or trust the peace you found without them? Let me know below. Story 5. The fundraiser was hiding something worse. This story started because a child was sick and a family needed money. But sometimes the most dangerous situations are the ones wrapped in the language of urgency and sympathy. My husband and I had already been uneasy about the whole thing. Numbers were not lining up. The pressure felt strange. It was one of those situations where you know something is off, but you do not yet have enough proof to name it. Still, the child was genuinely ill, and that was the part nobody was questioning. Then my husband saw something online that showed his cousin's husband was out of town, and we decided to reach out to the cousin directly. She agreed to meet, then invited us to her house. I did not even want to go, if I am honest. I thought it might be messy and awkward and none of our business. But my husband had grown up close to her, and he felt like we owed it to her to check. The minute we got there, the atmosphere felt wrong. She seemed nervous in her own home, not just embarrassed, not just stressed, wrong. Like she was trying to act normal from a place that had forgotten what normal even felt like. We sat down, started talking carefully, and told her that while we stood by our earlier decisions, we were open to helping in ways that were direct and transparent. And then she broke down. What came out next was bigger than a fundraiser, bigger than one lie. Her husband had a gambling problem. The debt everyone thought was around $80,000 was nowhere close. He had taken more than $500,000 against the house at one point to clear earlier damage, and then dug himself deeper. Anyway, the request for treatment money had been manipulated too. The true out-of-pocket cost was much lower, but he had inflated the number so he could cover both the medical need and his own financial wreckage in one move. That alone would have been enough to destroy trust, but it got worse. There were other things happening in that house. Things severe enough that the narrator would not even spell them out directly. She did not need to. The shape of it was clear enough. Fear, control, harm. The cousin was not just married to a reckless man, she was trapped with one. And once the truth surfaced, the whole family moved. Within hours, they got her and the child out of that house. Belongings, documents, essentials, everything that mattered. They moved them into a guest house, arranged direct payment to the hospital, spoke to lawyers, alerted security, and braced for fallout. Sunday night, the husband came home to an empty house and exploded. He started going from place to place, looking for them, demanding answers, creating scenes. He could not get through the family's security gates. He apparently even triggered a police welfare check trying to force access from another angle. But the family held the line. Nobody folded. Nobody handed her back. That is what struck me most in this story. Once the situation was fully seen, all the petty family drama disappeared. The noise vanished. In its place was something solid and immediate. Get her out, get the child safe, pay for treatment directly, lock the gates, call the lawyer, keep moving. The narrator even admitted taking a grim kind of satisfaction in watching the husband unravel, knowing he was now on track to lose the house, the marriage, maybe custody, and maybe even his job. Sometimes relief and anger arrive wearing the same face, because at the center of all of it is a woman who is carrying way more than debt, and a sick child who needed adults to stop being distracted by surface-level drama and finally do the right thing. They did. End story. Here's what I think. This is why direct help matters when something feels off. They did not just write a check into a black hole and hope for the best. They looked closer, and looking closer may have changed that woman's entire future. I also think the family deserves real credit for how fast they moved once the truth landed. There is no perfect response to a crisis like this, but decisive protection is a powerful one. The most important thing in the whole story is simple. The child is getting treatment, and the mother is not alone anymore. Would you have stepped in personally to investigate or kept your distance and only offered money? Let me know below. Story 6. I left town to give birth without my husband. I had already done the hardest part by the time they arrived. I had given birth. I had made it through labor. I had my baby with me, safe and new, and somehow that peace still felt fragile because I knew what was coming through the front door. My husband arrived first, or at least that is what I expected. But of course he did not arrive alone. His mother came with him. I was at my parents' house. My baby was in another room with my mother and sister. My brothers and father were there with me in the living room when they walked in, and the very first thing that woman said was not, "How are you?" Not, "Can I see the baby?" Not, "Are you recovering okay?" She looked at me and demanded to know whether the baby was a girl. I told her no. My baby was a boy. The entire expression on her face changed. She started crying, not out of joy, but out of disappointment. She said if she had known I was giving birth to another boy, she would never have been so nice to me in the first place. Imagine hearing that after just bringing your child into the world. For context, my husband has one brother, and that brother already has sons. Somewhere in her mind, this had become a mission. She wanted a granddaughter badly enough that she had turned my pregnancy into her private obsession. I snapped and told her this child was mine, not hers, and that I had not given birth to fulfill her fantasies. My brother stepped in before the argument could go further and told her to leave the house and wait in the car. She did, angry, glaring, but gone. Then my husband looked at me and asked how I could rob him of this moment. That is when everything else cracked open. I told him exactly why. I told him about the plan, about the fear that he and his mother would try to control the delivery room, the birth, the first moments with my baby. He turned pale. At first he claimed he had only gone along with things to calm his mother down, that he never would have actually followed through. But then, under pressure, another truth slipped out. He said he was going through a lot too and needed support in the delivery room. Support, as if that room had been about his comfort, as if I was selfish for not wanting the woman who treated my unborn child like a gender lottery ticket, hovering over the most vulnerable hours of my life. My whole family laughed at him. He got angry, demanded to know the baby's name, demanded to hold him. I let him see our son from a distance. I did not let him hold him. Later, I spoke to him alone and told him I wanted a divorce. He cried, he begged, he asked for another chance. I told him my decision was final. I even told him he did not need to financially support the baby because in that moment I wanted as much distance from him as possible. The marriage, as far as I was concerned, was over. I told him to come back the next day so we could discuss things more calmly, and the next day proved the problem was even worse than I thought. He came back with his mother again. She looked at her own son and said out loud that he should give me the divorce, forget this child since it was a boy, and find another woman who would give him a girl. That was the moment my husband finally seemed to wake up. He told her to get out. She shouted and left. Then he cried again and told me he finally understood how much damage she had done to our family. He said if I needed him to cut her off completely to save the marriage, he would do it. I told him I needed time. He was going back out of state for work and would return in about a week so we could talk again. That is where the story ends for now, and I think that is what makes it so hard. There is no clean conclusion yet, just a 23-year-old new mother holding her baby and trying to decide whether one late awakening is enough to trust after so much weakness, so much pressure, so much failure to protect her. Sometimes the deepest betrayal is not that someone attacked you, it is that the person who was supposed to stand between you and the attack kept stepping aside. End story. Here is what I think. His mother is awful, yes, but the real question is whether he can ever be trusted again after letting her poison such a critical moment. Cutting contact now is not heroic, it is late. Still, late realization is better than none, and I understand why she is struggling with the decision. She is exhausted, newly postpartum, and staring at a man who may finally be seeing clearly for the first time. If she gives him any chance at all, it should be slow, cautious, and on her terms only. Would you try a long separation with strict boundaries, or end the marriage before this pattern grows deeper? Let me know below. That is all the heartbreak and hard clarity I had tucked away for you tonight, and I think we have all earned a quiet exhale after that. If even one of these stories had you staring at the ceiling a little harder than usual, give this video a like. And if daily stories are part of your drive, your chores, your workout, or your late-night wind-down, come join us here at Relationship Stories. I am here every day with another stack of human chaos and hard truths. Take care of your heart, be gentle with yourself, and I will meet you in the next one.